Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to create a gRPC client and server. So first off, you're going to want to install the gRPC IO tools. So this is going to allow you to generate some code from your proto file, which is effectively your definition of what different API calls you're going to handle. So you've got the RPC definitions and what request and response you're going to handle, and whether it's going to be streaming client side, server side, or both. If your install doesn't work on gRPC IO tools, that probably means that your pip is out of date. So go ahead and update that just with the command I just did then, and then go ahead and try and reinstall. You're also going to want to install gRPC. That's just so that you can run your server and import it. So yeah. Once that's installed, you're ready to generate some boilerplate code that will be useful in creating your client and server. So it will basically set up the different requests and responses that you need, and also do some sort of connections and allow you to make the Unary or streamed calls. So here I am, I'm just going to go -free-m. I'm going to use grpc_tools.protoc, and I'm going to output to this current directory. I'm also going to output the gRPC file, which will contain like my client stub and also what my server should look like, into the same directory. And then I'm going to specify the proto file that I want to use. So the proto file I want to use is this greet.proto. One of the good things about gRPC is you can define your proto file once and use it multiple places. I've actually set this up previously in one of my C# gRPC demos, and I'm just reusing it now for this demo. So I can basically set up the same calls, but I don't need to generate a different definition of what my APIs are going to look like, because it's a sort of standardized language. So these are the two files that get generated: greet_pb2.py, which has all the different requests and responses, and then we've got this gRPC one, which has the services that you want to implement, and also the stub that you'll be using in the client side. So now I'm just going to go ahead and add my server and client files so I can go ahead and implement. So first I'm just going to call my server greet_server.py, and I'm going to do the same for the client, greet_client.py. So I'm going to go ahead and set up my server now. There's a few things I'm going to want to import. So first, from concurrent, I'm going to import futures. That's basically going to allow me to set the number of workers on my server. I'm going to import time. That's going to be useful later on when I'm streaming, because I want to show you guys the flow, and so I want to be able to show you that the messages, how the messages come through at different times. I'm also going to import gRPC, because obviously I'm creating a gRPC server here. And I'm going to want to import my greet pb2 and my greet pb2 gRPC files. So I'm going to create a greeter service, and that's basically going to extend this greet pb2 gRPC greeter servicer. It's basically going to implement all the different calls that I've defined inside my greet.proto file. I'm just going to leave them as like the default implementations for now. I'll come back and implement them all one by one and show you what the differences are and all that sort of thing. So I've got one that's say hello, that's Unary. I've got parrot says hello, that's actually a client server-side streaming. Then I've got chatty client says hello, which is client-side streaming. And finally, interacting hello, which is bidirectional streaming. Then I'm going to need to go ahead and set up my actual server. So I'm going to define a function serve. And I'm going to set up my server to be gRPC.server. And here I'm going to specify the number of threads that I want to have, the workers. So I've got 10 here. And I'm going to go ahead and also specify that I want to add my defined greeter service to the server. So the one that I've defined here I need to add so I can so that when I call the server it knows where to direct the requests. I'm also going to add the port, so basically what I'm going to call when I want to connect to my gRPC server. I'm just going to keep this localhost and give it a random port that's not being used, 50,051. Then I'm just going to go ahead and start my server. I'm going to need to call that function, so I'm going to want to go ahead and and I'm wanting that to just wait until I'm finished. Basically, if I hit Control C or Z in the command line, it will just exit. So I'm also going to want to run my serve command. So I'll just do that inside this if statement. Cool. So that's my server, the basic setup with no actual implementation of the gRPC, but I'll go ahead and add that in a minute. Now I'm going ahead and setting up my client. So I'm going to import the gRPC files again that were auto-generated, so the greet pb2 gRPC and the greet pb2. I'm going to go ahead and import time again. This will just show the flow a bit better later on when I have some streaming going on. And then I'm going to import gRPC because obviously this is a gRPC client. So now that I've got all that set up, I can actually define a function that's going to run my my client. And basically what I want to do is I'm going to want to create a channel that I can connect to the gRPC on. So I'm just going to create a gRPC insecure channel and pass the server's connection string here. So I'm going to connect to localhost by 50,051, and I'm going to use that as channel. That's going to allow me to call through and make gRPC calls. So I'm going to create a stub, which is what I will use to call the gRPC calls. And I can just do greet pb2 gRPC.greeter stub and then just pass in that channel that I've defined. I'm going to print out a few things. So I'm going to give the user the option of what gRPC call they want to make. This is just a little interactive console application. So I'm just going to have my different options. So say hello, which is Unary. Then I'm going to go ahead and edit these. So I've got server-side streaming for parrot says hello. And then my third option is going to be the chatty client says hello, which is the client-side streaming. And then I'm going to have an interacting hello, which is going to be the bidirectional streaming. So basically what this is going to do is it'll print those options out. Then I'm going to take user input as to which option the user wants to run so that they can sort of test out the different means of connecting to gRPC and making a gRPC call. So I'm going to just create an input. Which RPC would you like to call? Then I've just got an if statement that will handle the different options that I pass in. So if the RPC is equal to 1, it's going to do the parrot says hello. But once again, I'm just not going to implement that for now. I'm just going to go ahead and get my setup done so that you can go ahead and follow all the gRPC code in one go. So you can skip ahead if you want. Yeah. So I'm going to repeat this for options 2, 3, and 4. And as I implement them, they'll do the different options which I've specified above. Then I'm just going to need to call my run method so that it will go ahead and prompt the user and make any gRPC calls that are relevant. Once it's run through once, it's going to just exit out. You could make it so that it continuously checks what the user would like to do. The first RPC call is my say hello one. It takes a hello request and returns a hello reply. Those are defined in the greet pb2 file. And if I go to this greet pb2 gRPC file, you can see that we've got a few different things in here. So some of the things are a stub, so this greeter stub here, which defines how I'd make my call to the server. So you can sort of see how it's making that call for me and specifying stream Unary, stream, Unary stream, all that sort of thing. So that's defining how it's calling the gRPC methods. And it's sort of boilerplate, so it hasn't made me implement it. It's been auto-generated, which is quite nice. So now I'm going to go ahead and make my, specify my request. So my request will have a greeting and a message. So greeting, I'm just going to put bonjour for now. And for my name, I'm going to put YouTube. What I'm expecting this say hello call to do is to actually just return a message of those two things concatenated. So I'm going to get a hello reply when I call the stub.sayHello and pass in my hello request. Then I'm just going to add some printing out so that you can sort of see that it's actually working. So say hello, response received. And then I'm going to go ahead and print out my hello reply. Now that I've implemented the client side of things, I'm going to go ahead and implement the server side of things. This say hello function is basically very similar to a REST API call in that you make a request and you receive a response. So it sort of mimics that behavior. Inside my say hello function on the server side, I'm going to print say hello request made and what my request is. Then I'm going to go ahead and build up my response object, so my hello reply. Hello reply is going to have a message, so I'll just go and specify that. And I'm going to use string formatting here. So the F just means formatting, and then you can specify the variables inside the string without having to do string concatenation. So I can do request.greeting and request.name. And that's going to be my message I return. Then I can go ahead and actually return that message instead of calling the super say hello. Cool. So now I've got that. If I go ahead and run it, it should just work. So I'm going to type in my command, Python 3, and then my greet server.py. You may not need the Python 3. You may just be able to run it with Python. It just will depend on your computer's configuration. I'm going to do the same for this client. It's just going to go ahead and run that. It should output, it outputs my different options, but I've only implemented one at the moment, so I'll choose that. You can see that it says hello request made and the request, and then it says what the response was, and that all is as expected based on what we've entered into our server and client side. Next we're going to do parrot says hello, which returns a hello request. I'll make a hello request and then stream back a hello reply, which basically means that the client will keep receiving messages from the server until the server stops sending them, basically. So that's going to be done with this function, this statement, which is called yield in Python, and it's just basically going to let it continuously send messages back to us. So we're going to still use the same hello request, but this time we're calling parrot says hello, and we're going to receive back replies, so multiple replies. Then we will loop through them. So we're actually going to get each reply as they come back, and I'll show you that by using the timeout. But yeah, that's basically how it's going to work. You will send a response, you'll receive, you'll make your request, and then you'll receive your reply until the server stops replying, basically. And it'll be able to send as many as it wants. So on the server side, my code's going to be much the same. I'm going to print parrot says hello request made. Then I'm going to print the request. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a new loop. So what I'm going to do with my loop is I'm basically going to loop through 3 times. So I'm going to go for I in range 3. And then each time I'm going to create a hello reply. So I'm going to basically send 3 replies back for the one request. And this reply is going to have the same message as above. It's just going to have hello reply.message equal to the string formatted of request greeting and the request name. But I'm also going to include which reply it is. So I'll include I plus 1, just so you can sort of see what's going on, and you can see that the messages are coming back in the right order. I'm also going to just add, so like I said, you use yield rather than return when you're wanting to do streaming. So you'll yield your reply, and then I'm just going to add this time.sleep so you can sort of see that it takes, that it will, that you'll actually get the messages individually, not all in one go. Okay, so I can also remove that return because I'm just using a yield here instead. So I'm just going to restart that server and then start my client and choose option 2. So it says that my request is made and returns a response. Then after 3 seconds it returns another. Then after 3 seconds it returns another. So you can see that the flow was request made, response 1, response 2, response 3, and they all came through individually. And so yeah, that's pretty good. So yeah, inside that proto file, I forgot to show you this earlier, you can also define your different messages. Repeated is basically kind of like an array. So I can have a repeated messages, and I'm going to show you that now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to implement this chatty client says hello, and to do that I'm going to need a function that's going to yield my different requests, because I'm going to send multiple requests through to the server before I receive a final reply. So this could be useful if you want to send some data to the server and have it collate things, and then once you're done, get a response that sort of summarizes things. So I'm going to have a while loop here, and I'm just going to request names. So please enter a name, and it's going to stop and get the response basically once I enter nothing. And so that's when I'll get my response and be able to show the reply from the server. So if name is equal to empty string, I'm just going to break on out. Otherwise, I'm going to create a hello request. I'm going to just do as many requests as I want until that empty string is met. So I'm going to create my hello request with a greeting, which is just going to be hello, and then the name that the user has specified. And then I'm going to yield that hello request. So once again, that yield is kind of like we'll send that request through to the server, even though our for loop may not have completely finished and our function is not completely exited. I've got the timeout there, that's just going to help you see the flow a bit better again, but not for this one, it'll be for the next one. So I'm going to get a delayed reply back from my server side, and I'm just going to call stub.chattyClient says hello and call that get client stream request function so that I can get my stream of client requests. And then I'm just going to print out the response basically from the server, which will summarize the messages that I've sent. Now that I've implemented the client side, I can go over and implement the server side. So you can see I've got a request iterator this time instead of a request. That basically means I've got a list of requests that will be coming through, but they'll actually just come through one by one as I send them, and I'll be able to show you that as the messages come through, I'll get my server side printing things out. So I'm going to need to initialize this delayed reply. That's going to be the reply I send. And then for each request that comes through, I'm going to want to print out that a request was made, print out exactly what the request was, and I'm also going to add to my delayed reply. It had a repeated sort of list of requests, so I'm going to add to that. So yeah, here I am, print the request, and then I'm going to go delayed reply, dot request, dot append. So that's just going to add this request to the end of the request repeated list. And then I'm going to set this message, which is just going to summarize the number of messages I've received, basically. So I'm going to say you've sent a certain number of messages, so I can use the delayed reply dot request property. That's going to give me the number of messages I've sent because I've been adding them to delayed reply request. And then I'm just going to say please expect a delayed reply, as this reply is not going to actually come through until the client has finished sending messages. Then I'm going to return the delayed reply. Cool, so now that's going, I'm going to restart my server because I've made some changes, and I'm also going to start my client. I'm going to choose option 3, and I'm going to enter a name, James. You can see that the request was made and I got the response. I got no response. Then I enter another name, Johnny, and you can see that the request was made once again. Then I enter a third name, Jill. Once again, the request was made. I enter nothing this time. It returns that you have sent 3 messages. Please expect a delayed response. And then it will list out all the different requests that I added to my request property of delayed reply. So now that I've got my client and server-side streaming done, I'm going to show you bi-directional streaming. So this one's pretty obvious when you might use this one, like you might have a chat going between 2 people, and so you're going to sort of be sending and receiving responses, that sort of thing. So basically I'm going to specify that I'm going to receive some responses from my interacting hello. I'm going to call my get client stream requests again so that it will work in the same way as my chatty client for sending requests. And then I'm going to, for each response, print that I've received the response and what the response object was. So print the response. So that's the client side implemented. It's pretty simple because I've already implemented the client streaming and I'm able to reuse that. Now if I head on over to the server side, it's going to be reasonably simple too. What I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to, every time I receive a request, I'm going to want to print it out just so that you can sort of see that the request was made. And then I'm going to want to send a response back that aligns with that request. So I'm going to say interacting hello, request made. Then I'm going to print out the request just so you can sort of see what's happening. And then I'm going to create a hello reply, which is basically going to be the same as what my Unary call did, except it's just going to happen multiple times without closing the stream. Once again, because I have because I'm sending multiple messages through a stream, I'm just going to use that yield statement rather than a return here. So I'm going to yield this hello reply. Cool, so now that I have that going, I'm going to restart my server once again. And I'm going to start my client up and select option 4. So I'll enter a name. It'll say that request was made and send me the response back. I enter another name, it says the request is made and sends the response back. And I'll enter a final name, says the request was made and enters the response back. If I hit enter, it exits out. I hope you've enjoyed today's tutorial. If you have, the code's all on GitHub, and please like and subscribe for more content. I also have a video on gRPC versus REST which might be useful and is linked in the description below.